Everybody loves changes, and the Houston Texans made changes this offseason. Laremy Tunsil out, Cole Popovich in, Cam Robinson, Ed Ingram, Laken Tomlinson is in Houston. But none of those things matter if the Houston Texans cannot protect C.J. Stroud and open up running gap lanes for the running backs. Offensive line grades on today's podcast.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town, today's podcast. And every podcast is for Texan fans all around. I am your Texans Credential Media member and Texans football analyst, the John Hickman. Excited for today's podcast because we are getting into the real offensive line. Will they hold up? If they don't hold up, will it be a failed season? All things offensive line. Of course, this is the pre-training camp offensive grades. The running backs. Now we are on to the offensive line. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On NFL. I want to shout out all of the everydayers from the Himalayas for making Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. Each and every day, we'll be back with 5 shows a week starting next week. And I can't wait to talk Texas with you guys, man. I say it all the time, man. It's been a very slow grind of an offseason, right? But we are back talking training camp. We're back talking preseason. We're back talking the whole nine. Opening up today's show, looking at the offensive line grades, where I give it a grade. What grade do I give the offensive line as it currently stands? We'll dive into living and dying up front. What does that mean? Stick around. And the Locked On Network Top 100. That's going to be fun. Y'all going to love that, so make sure you stick around for that segment as well. New faces for the Houston Texans up front. Ed Ingram, Laken Tomlinson, Cam Robinson, Trent Brown, essentially replacing Laremy Tunsil, Shaq Mason. Also, Chris Strausser is out. Cole Popovich is in. So what grade do I give the Houston Texans? Well, this is one of those moments. If I was in grade school, I'd have to get a paperback to the kid face down with my glasses and see me after class, right? But I'm gonna give it a C. And I got to face down because that student is a student that wants to be an A+ student. That student wants to be a student that wants to thrive and wants that scholarship. The C ain't going to help you. And honestly, you was a couple of questions away from being a D. And so this grade I give Houston is a C. And if the unit hits their floor, it'll hit a D quick. In 2024, 52 sacks allowed for the Houston Texans, third most in the NFL, an average of 3 sacks per game. According to Next Gen Stats, the Texans gave up a staggering 245 total quarterback pressures, regular season and postseason combined, most in the NFL. My God, that takes me back to the Deshaun Watson days. Houston saw more than 15 quarterback pressures or hits per game. C.J. Stroud, man. And they talk about a quarterback slump. You're dealing with 245 total pressures, 52 sacks, 15 quarterbacks hurries and hits per game. And, on some of those occasions, that's just average. Some of those occasions, you're getting 20, 22 hurries or pressures per game. So he went through a lot last year. It's the duty of this team to be better in all phases of the game, including the offensive line, right? PFF ranked them dead last in overall offensive line play, with the worst of the bunch coming at the interior spots for the Houston Texans guard and center, where Houston saw most of their pressure. So obviously going into the offseason, a change had to be made. And moved on from Laremy, moved on from Shaq Mason, and moved on from their coach. What did they do? Well, they brought in Laken Tomlinson. New addition, allowed 6 sacks in 2024. Okay, well, they brought in Cam Robinson. New addition. And I ain't talking about like Bobby Brown and them, Rap Treasury. That's the good new addition. The new addition for Houston, Cam Robinson, 7 sacks, 52 pressures allowed, 13 penalties according to PFF. Trent Brown, new addition, coming off an injury. He only appeared in 3 games before rupturing his patella tendon. 1 sack, which is pretty good. 1 penalty, which is pretty good. 0 hits. and 5 pressures, only 5 pressures. So Trent Brown is a player that I keep telling y'all, man, if he's healthy and ready to go, I wouldn't be shocked if I saw Trent Brown beat out Blake Fisher. Wouldn't be shocked. And I think that would kind of force Blake Fisher to eventually be the quote-unquote swing tackle, at least for this upcoming year. But a motivated Trent Brown, a healthy Trent Brown will cause some real competition at that right tackle spot. But those are the new additions to this line, essentially replacing Laramie Tunsil and Shaq Mason. Now, this line will have a new coach, which gives Houston somewhat of an edge. But the truth is that this line is currently viewed as a group that can't be the anchor. What do I mean by that? Well, let's go directly to Philly. And this is a great time to have this conversation because the conversation is going on right now. Is CJ Stroud a top 10 quarterback? And you got Jalen Hurts in the top 10 conversations. And I think you can make the case for Jalen Hurts. He won Super Bowl MVP. A lot of people overlook him. But regardless, when I look at Philly, what stands out to me is how well they protect their quarterback, how well they block up front for the running backs. Detroit, same thing. The years of having a good offensive line and a great anchor in Trent Williams in San Fran. Some teams know how to put a damn good offensive line together. That's not the case here in Houston. And whenever that is not the case for a team, especially for a younger team with a younger quarterback, then you look at all of the hardships that quarterback is forced to go through because there's no trust with the front 5 guys. Can they create running lanes consistently? Can they block consistently to keep the quarterback upright? This team offensive line ain't the anchor. So they'll need help from other positions. Coaching, of course, and they make the coaching change. I give them the edge. That partially plays into the reason why I gave them a C. But the tight ends and running backs, I did the running back grades to kick off this week, and I mentioned how you want to make sure that those vets are available and ready back there because with everything going on with the offensive line, you want to make sure CJ Stroud has protection. He's going to be having more on his plate this year based off some conversations. And, hey, listen, CJ needs to be upright. Those running backs between Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb, those vets, they'll help him stay upright. Play calling. And I mean that from a sense of needing to get the ball out early and schematically from a POV standpoint, point of view standpoint, like just getting those tight ends on the same page with the offensive line, right? What the personnel looks like. This is clearly the weakest part of the offensive side of the ball and maybe the entire team. Did Houston feel they need to get better coaching? Yes. Am I a fan of this? Of course. But do I think this offensive line will be just flat out better because of their own merit? No. It is going to take some real intentionality from Nick Cady to hide the flaws of what this line can and cannot do. And that'll be the biggest hill for Cady to get over. That's going to be the biggest hill for this offense altogether to get over. Check this out from Nick Cady. Listen to what he had to say. This was when he got hired. This is a press conference. And listen to what Nick Cady says his offense would be.
Well, it depends on the players we got, and that's not a cop-out. That's the reality of it. So it can evolve, be willing to change and do whatever we need to do that's necessary based on who we have and who we're playing. Whether that's, again, you want to get big in terms of multiple personnel or not, gap schemes or zone schemes, committing to more play action or not, that's going to really be dependent on, what your personnel dictates and who you have available. So again, that's the great part about this year is we get to do a lot of different things and really put a lot of guys in different positions to run certain routes, some of these guys have never done anything, or certain routes that we have, and they might be just exclusively outside receivers that we're working inside and vice versa. So it's a good opportunity just to see what these guys can do.
He said it. Not me. I mean, I'm saying it too, but he understands that they're going to have to work with what they have. And what they have right now, at least on paper, based off of what we saw from the past 2 seasons, they have a very underwhelming offensive line. Now, they don't live and die up front. They don't have to live and die up front. And what does living and dying up front look like for the Houston Texans? The importance of the offensive line being as best they can, because the offensive success lies And where this offense can go and where this team ultimately can go, it lies in the offensive line being better. I'll continue this conversation on the other side of the Locked On Texans podcast. Don't miss out. Stay locked in on Locked On. But first, Texan fans, again, man, listen, we got preseason games coming up, man. Y'all don't want to miss no preseason games. I know you don't, because I don't want to miss no preseason game. We can't beg for football, and when football gets here, we just say, hey, man, we don't really care about it no more. No, that's not the case. We need football, and we need to be at the games for the Houston Texans. That said, anytime the Houston Texans hit the NRG, we need to celebrate because we don't know how much longer they'll be at the NRG. But anytime they hit the NRG, Texan fans, you need to be there. Preseason game against the Panthers at home, Saturday, August 16th at noon. Be there with Game Time. You absolutely can, because their tickets, they always go on sale. You always can find somewhere to sit. It is not just the NFL. It's not just sports. You can go find concert tickets. We've all been there. Logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to use your spot for a show you've been dying to see, or for a game you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memory. Texan games should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets, sporting events tickets, theater event tickets near you faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Worried about what happens if the plans change? Game Time Guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees at all. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets, game tickets, theater tickets, comedy show tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back, Texan fans. Thank you for staying locked in on the Locked On Texans podcast. So we continue our great conversations and talking about the offensive line, the pre-grades as we get ready for training camp. And again, I want to open up with, I gave the offensive line group as of right now a C. And if this unit hits their floor, it'll hit a grade of a D very quickly. And I ain't talking about Detroit, right, which is where Cody Davis is. And we got something coming up for you guys soon. But back to the offensive line. This team's success, and I'm talking about true success. I'm talking about, because what I'm going to call success for the Houston Texans over the course of the next 2 seasons is getting over the divisional round hump. That's success. Do I think they're good enough to win the division? Yeah, the division is weaker right now, man. It's one of the weaker divisions in the NFL, if not the weakest. But that don't matter for them no more. And I think it's, good to continue to add to that. Yeah, 3 years in a row, division winners. You can probably get another playoff game out of that, but it starts to become baby boy and BET, another rerun that we've seen time and time again, and some of us are tired of seeing it because we want to see this team reach new heights. And so the offensive line plays a major role in the type of version of quarterback you're going to get, the type of running game you're going to get. And here's why, I'll give you guys some numbers. Here's why it's important for all hands to be on deck and coaching to be top tier and play calling to be top tier. And those guys in the offensive room, especially guys that were here before, kind of remove themselves from the stench of the 2024, 2023, like be a better unit. CJ Stroud's performance in a clean pocket. Yards per attempt, 9.3, third in the NFL. EPA per dropback. And this is a season total when protected, plus 0.60 versus negative 1.78 under pressure. Touchdowns, 16 of his 21 touchdowns came from a clean pocket. The passer rating in the pocket, 106.8, a 68.4% completion percentage. 49% success rate. That's top 3 among quarterbacks when CJ has a clean pocket. The non-protected pockets, the performance in non-clean pockets, excuse me. Again, I gave you guys the EPA. It's in the negatives when pressured. And that means when the pocket collapses, CJ faced pressure, and he faced pressure. The average play cost the team just over 1 point in expectancy. That's a huge difference from when the pocket is kept clean. And I read on this was on an article that I read on Houston Chronicle from a while back. Look at the negative EPA impact. See, the one thing Houston struggled with last season that really hurt them in terms of how national media view them and how we may view them here locally, those 1 point games that the Houston Texans should have won. Green Bay, Detroit, games like New York. That's 3 games. You see Houston go from 10-7 to 13-4. Right? The perception is different. And then if they carry that into the postseason, do they get over the hump against Kansas City? At one point, they had the lead in that game and they had them on the ropes. The negative EPA impact, the pressure, cost the team more than 17 touchdowns worth of scoring. You talk about night and day. You talk about a difference in between an elite quarterback, because out of those 17 touchdowns, we're looking at a clean pocket. How many of that is CJ Stroud? Does that number go from 20 to 30? Do we finally get the 30 touchdown season from CJ Stroud? So when I talk about living and dying up front, it may not necessarily be the team's depth resulting in missing the playoffs. They may make the playoffs. They made the playoffs last year with a bad offensive line. But for this team to actually live and thrive, it's all about getting over the hump of the divisional round. And to do that, they cannot repeat another season of being an inadequate offense, not being able to score points. To score points, you're going to need to give your quarterback at times a cleaner pocket. D'Amico Ryan said he had cut-ups and told his guys, hey, when we give CJ Stroud time to throw, he's a much different quarterback. He's an elite quarterback, and I cut it up. Showed it to his guys. Houston is in need for the makeover that they went out there and made those changes. They need that makeover to be prettier than what it was last season. This is Nick Cady talking about his stamp on the offense.
Yeah, I think everything, to answer your question, really it's not my stamp specifically. It's what suits the strength of the guys that we got. So I think we're in the discovery process through phase 2, and we get to work with them on the field, get an opportunity to see the different skill sets, the different routes, the different schemes that we could potentially deploy this year. So it's really an evolving process, and this is the time to really kind of put the rubber on the road and see what we can do and evolve from there.
I don't want to speculate the type of personnel we will see from Houston. I don't really want to speculate how Houston will go about protecting the quarterback, right? I think next week we'll get to that. We'll start to see those beginning phases of, okay, we're seeing some 22 personnel out there, right? Okay. It seems like this is where Houston is leaning towards in terms of the pecking order or the tight end group, because maybe there's trust more there with this tight end to be able to create a little bit more time or a chip block better. So I don't want to get to that because I know it's coming up. But Nick Cady, who I think, based off of his resume, the guys he's worked under and worked with, and some of the things that we've heard him say, I think that he is smart enough to know I am not going to hit a home run in my first at-bat. That's rare. That is rare. So if I'm not going to hit a home run, all right, what do I do to get this team over the hump? Well, maybe I can hit a double. And what is a double for Houston? What is a double for the Houston Texans in terms of blocking for their quarterback and creating running rooms? Well, a double is, because we're looking at success, if you can hit a double, you got a man on third, you can bring him on in at home. And home for Houston is success. And success for Houston is get into essentially an AFC Championship game, which every other team in the division has done. The double for Houston is I need to know what personnel works and mesh well together for the style of play that I want to, the style of offensive play calling that I want to establish here in Houston. Does he dial it back a little bit with Dalton Schultz? And do we see more of the two young tight ends and Brevin Jordan and Case Stover in the red zone? Because in the red zone, we saw when they gave him time, we saw CJ Stroud be impactful and effective. We saw Joe Mixon be impactful and effective, right? On certain downs to distance, who's out there? Who's out there to kick it off? Do I and this is something that I want you guys to think about. He hasn't been healthy, so his name hasn't come up a lot. He got some weight on him, but he's been working out of training. When Trent Brown finally does get on the field, if he gets on the field, and if you said some of that weight and he's at a good playing weight, realistically, does he beat out Blake? Does he beat out Blake? That's a real conversation to have. But he's going to have to find a way, given what he has, given his experience, given what the Houston Texans have put in front of him to work with, offensive line, because he just came from LA, and then from LA in New England for a number of years, combined together, those have been some good offensive lines. This team doesn't compare. How can he hit a double? How can he get his guy back on home? And his guy is CJ Stroud in the offense. They go hand in hand. How can he get that version of success for this team? Because if he can, and the defense continues to hold up like they've been holding up, then we will see this team in a championship game sooner than later. Now we have to dive into the Locked On Network's top 100 list. Stick around. Y'all go ahead and have fun in the comment section. More Locked On Texans on the way. Battery Nation, thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. Training camp, just a week away. Just a week away. Just some time away, man. And I don't know about y'all, man. And it's been raining in Houston, but I want to feel that heat a little bit. I want that sweat to come down my cheek. I want to smell fresh cut grass in the morning. I want to see a cooler of water and Gatorade. I want to hear chirping in the background. I want to hear helmets clacking and clicking and hitting each other. I want to hear it all. I want to see it all, because that means we are finally getting to the nick of things of the new Texans regime offensively and another season of football altogether. Now, that being said, guys, I got to show y'all something. The Houston Texans top 100 players that made the Locked On Network's top 100 list. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to count it down. Danielle Hunter at 99. I thought that was pretty low. Will Anderson at 66. I thought that was pretty low. Nico Collins, based off of the injury and everything, 61 is where he's ranked. I think that's pretty fair. CJ Stroud, 58. I think that's pretty fair given the year that he had in 2024. All-Pro Derek Stingley sits at 23, one away from his number 24, but in this case, I think 23 is better. These are your Houston Texans on the Locked On Network's top 100 list. And like I said, I think for Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, for Danielle, he's a guy that missed a few sacks last year because guys just got away, but you rank everything he did in terms of total pressure, sacks, QB hits. This guy's a reason why the Texans DBs were able to feast last year. He's going to be a big reason why the secondary for Houston can feast this year, right? Same for Will Anderson, who this is for you guys. When Will Anderson reaches his peak, his ceiling, is he a Defensive Player of the Year winner? So I thought he was a candidate last season. Missed games, so that played a role into it. But I think that he definitely was one of those top 10 defensive players in the NFL. I think Derek Stingley is a little bit higher. I'm not sure if we'll see too many cornerbacks win Defensive Player of the Year. I can't remember who the last one to win it, but for Derek Stingley, he's going to have to like get those 5 interceptions and return some of those interceptions for touchdowns. And for Sting, man, we've seen Stingley get the interception and return it, but then just kind of like BS the last 20 yards and get caught, which is crazy because before he came out, he never ran that 40, but people were saying he ran like a 4.2 or 4.1. So I would love to see Stingley kind of return a few in the season. Is it the year that happens this year? I'm not sure. But these are your Texas top 100 players. Again, Derek Stingley at 23, CJ Stroud at 58, Nico Collins at 61. I think those two are pretty fair, honestly, because of the season that the Houston Texans offense had last year. Will Anderson at 66. Danielle Hunter at 99. No Larry Tunsil on this list for Houston because he is no longer a Houston Texan. And for a few of you guys, you probably will, celebrate that and rejoice. But let me know how you guys feel about the top 100 list for the Houston Texans. Will we see Nico elevate from 61 to higher than that? Because the fun thing about these lists are, and CJ Stroud as well, the fun thing about these lists are players take it personal. Like 61, y'all think 60 players are better than me? Now, of course, like the top 10 to maybe 20, those guys are, for the most part, they are always going to be a lock. Especially the top 10 to 15 players. But Nico Collins at 61, I think if there's any of these guys that may mid-season, we may have a different conversation. It's Will Anderson, it's Nico Collins, and it is CJ Stroud. I think if I break it down in tiers, Nico and Will are the two guys that I have above everybody else on this team. Because for CJ, he's going to need that offensive line to block better. But Nico was a big part of what the Houston Texans offense was in 2024 and in 2023. But in 2024, we saw this offensive line not be good at all, and he still was able to be 66. So if this offensive line is even a tad bit better, we're looking at a different version of Nico. And then Will Anderson, 16 games. 16 games, and we'll see what those numbers look like. So he'll go from 66. He could very well jump 30 spots. He could, and this is fun to talk about. We see where they are now, right? Where will they be mid-season, and where will they be at the end of next season when we bring this back? Thank y'all for watching and listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please subscribe on YouTube at Locked On Texans. Comment, like as well. Let me know how you like the show, and not also subscribe, but also follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. The offensive grades will continue. What is next? Tight end. Tight end is next. Make sure you listen to the squad shows that comes out every Tuesday and Friday. We aim for 6 o'clock. That features Michael Connor, Aisha Morrison, and my man Stan Northfleet. Again, those are the live Texans squad show. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, Texan fans across the nation, I can't wait to talk Texas with y'all again. Peace.